we have a positive bias about how good we are at reading other people, and yet our unconscious bias is towards the negative. So it's totally skewed. Our instinct about other people and their behavior, when we unconsciously read their body language, we are totally skewed, but it saves our life sometimes.
Welcome to the Mindful Communication Podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Miller. And on today's episode, we interview Mark Bowden. Mark is one of the world's top body language experts, having worked with sales and leadership teams, CEOs, and Fortune 500 companies, even prime ministers of G7 powers. His TED Talk has been viewed over 1 million times, and he's the co-author of the book, Truth and Lies, What People Are Really Thinking. Why I absolutely loved this interview is that we came together to talk about body language and what it means and how it affects our communication. And what I really took away from the interview is when it comes to body language, it doesn't really matter how much you know about body language. Mark has been on a journey to better understand how it is that we communicate nonverbally, and yet the conclusions he has come to is that he knows very little. And in fact, master craftsmen at body language are in this pursuit of understanding the fact that they do not know what other people's body language really means. It's almost like an exercise in humility. As you deepen your knowledge in the subject, there's an understanding about the fact that we often don't know about what other people's body language means, and what we want to be doing is more and more often checking in on our own judgments and asking questions about them. We dive into this and a lot more in the first half of the interview. Mark Bowden, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
So I'm really excited to have you as a body language expert. I guess I'd love to start off by asking you, how did you get into this area of body language, and how did you become an expert in it?
Yeah, so as a kid, I was totally obsessed with animal behavior, especially sea life. Loved to get in the water as a kid, in rock pools, look at jellyfish and starfish and fish and crabs and kind of wonder, why do they move, how they move, and the water, why does it move, how it moves. And then a little bit later on, I got more obsessed with human movement. Again, really about behavior and, why do I do this? Why, when I do this, do they do that? Why do they do that? And I don't know why they do that. So I got interested in that area of nonverbal influence and persuasion, got really interested in the areas of visual art as well, animation, how to tell stories with pictures, got really focused on that, how you can use pictures to influence and persuade people, to trigger feelings and emotions in them and intentions. And so it all kind of came together in this expertise around nonverbal communication and body language and how to use that really to influence and persuade others.
And where did you learn a lot of this stuff? There's no degree out there in body language, is there?
No, not that I know of. There are some degrees out there that do some work around nonverbal. So it's not that it's totally out of the academic field. There's lots of academic work going on around nonverbal. I just read more than anybody else I know. I think they call it autodidactic.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. So I was just obsessed by it, and then I started talking more to the other people who were in this world and going and training with them and working alongside them, until I found that I was part of really a handful of people who are considered really great in this area. So here I am. I arrived somehow at this point of being, expert in my field.
Yeah, and it really does sound like you kind of got into this just at the right time. In 2018 on LinkedIn, the single most popular course was on body language.
That's amazing.
So why do you think body language has exploded in popularity?
Well, actually, I think it could be partly to do with a TED Talk that Amy Cuddy did.
Oh, yeah. This is the Superman kind of pose.
Absolutely, yeah. And that, to an extent, popularized and legitimized work that many of us have been doing for, well, certainly myself, at least 10 years beforehand, but things we'd known for thousands of years, which is if you change your body, you change your mind. It's not an unusual thing for us in this area. It's just Amy Cuddy did some science on it and got a TED talk around it, and people really loved that. So I think she legitimized and popularized one idea about body language, and that did very well for the rest of us. But I think we've always been interested in how we can have power. For sure, this idea of influence and persuasion is absolutely about having power for all kinds of good reasons, for all kinds of negative reasons as well, and everything else in between. Also, how we can have power to influence and persuade, and how we can have power to understand what people might be thinking, feeling, and intending. So there's a lot of body language stuff out there around, I can tell what you're thinking. In fact, the subtitle of our latest book was What People Are Really Thinking. It's maybe a bit of a bait and switch, though.
Yeah. There's a few things I wanted to touch on there. I love that you brought up that we are, as humans, we're kind of obsessed with wanting to know what others are thinking.
Yeah.
Like, we just want to know that you can be sitting right in front of me, which you are, and I have no idea what's going on in your head.
Well, that's true. You totally don't. You are not a mind reader. I've really looked into this, and I haven't found any mind readers.
You sure?
For sure.
Okay, no black magic out there?
There's nothing out there that will allow you to be able to look into somebody's brain and know what they're thinking, feeling, and intending. What we do have, however, is theory of mind. Our brain is designed to get a theory about what somebody is thinking, feeling, and intending. And sometimes our theory turns out to be very accurate. Sometimes it turns out to be very inaccurate, and everything else in between. However, our theory always feels very accurate to us, whether it's accurate or not, or something in between. And so what happens is this little trick happens that, I get my theory of mind about you. It feels very true. And then it turns out, wow, you were thinking that. And now suddenly I'm like, wow, I really read people's minds. I'm really good. And that might happen like 2-3 times. And now I'm superhuman until I get it wrong. And then it's like, wow, I just don't know anybody anymore. And then that lasts for about, a couple of seconds. And then I go, no, I'm really good at reading people. Yeah. You're just broken. Like, you're just an odd one. You were being duplicitous on purpose. You were trying to cheat me out of my rank as being superhuman in being able to read people. So you get lots of people who go, yeah, no, I'm really good. I'm really good intuitive about. No, it's not. You're just guessing. You've just guessed right, and you've remembered when you guessed right, and you've forgotten when you guessed wrong.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and that kind of makes me think about this idea. Well, first off, you just mentioned that we remember when we think right, this kind of positive bias we have about ourselves. And I wonder why that is. I imagine that it's something to do with a survival mechanism. We don't want to necessarily remember the bad. And there's another thing you also mentioned, the idea that we get it right, and we're like, oh, yeah, this is the way. And then we get it wrong and we go, oh, maybe this is not the way. And then we go back. And it falls into that classic black and white thinking. It's our default is not to think, oh, well, sometimes I'm good at guessing and sometimes I'm not. And probably I don't actually know, and these are just guesses. My mind is more so in the idea of, oh, well, I'm like almost always right. Like, this is so.
Well, absolutely. So imagine a world whereby you are walking around 24/7 with a mindset that you have no idea what other people are thinking. Like, how would you get on?
Yeah.
How would you do anything? So we have to have a positive bias around our own ability. However, our instinct has a negative bias. So an example of that is if I don't know why you've crossed your arms, then I'll bias to a negative. But there's some very positive reasons why people cross their arms. It's a barrier gesture, but sometimes the barrier is there for some really, really positive reasons. But when somebody doesn't say to you, hey, I'm just crossing my arms to keep warm right now, or I'm just crossing my arms because I'm fascinated by what you're saying and I want to really pay attention to it, and close down all my other bodily movement in order to really focus on you right now. When they don't tell you that, you go, oh, well, they're clearly bored and negative about me. And I know for sure because I've seen it and I've got the instinct for it. My gut tells me. So we have a positive bias about how good we are at reading other people, and yet our unconscious bias is towards the negative. So it's totally skewed. Our instinct about other people and their behavior, when we unconsciously read their body language, we are totally skewed. But it saves our life sometimes.
Yeah, it's like a survival mechanism.
Absolutely.
Right?
It's skewed for our survival and skewed for our optimism on the planet. Now, interestingly enough, what I train people in terms of body language reading and the way I do it, and many of my colleagues out there use the same system, which is the first thing many of us will do is suspend judgment the moment we see indicators. It's that, in fact, when people say, why are you so highly ranked in this world of body language? It's like, well, because I spend most of my time just going, well, I don't know. I don't know what that means. I have no idea. And then you go, would we want to know? How important would it be to really know? What would be the value of really knowing this? And then you can decide whether you want to do the work of using your conscious thought, your intelligent thought, to work out and get closer to the truth of what may be going on with somebody.
So my mind is blown right now because my conception of what a body language is about, and maybe if I took a course on body language, what I'm learning is kind of if someone's crossing their arms, here are all the things it means. Right. And what you're saying is that, yes, body language experts, they know all those things, and they're also asking other questions.
Yeah.
They're asking first, is this important?
Right.
Do I want to make guesses here? What else could it possibly mean? Those are the first questions you're asking, and you've trained yourself to ask those questions.
Absolutely. It's critical thinking. That's all it is. It's critical thinking. It's critical thinking in an area that we have an unconscious mind that will do it automatically for us, but with these two extreme biases. And I'm not saying that you should be critically thinking all behavior that you see, because number one, in some cases, you'll get killed. You'll end up dead. So your instinct is there to save your life. It's just the same system that it uses to save your life. It's using that system when you're not under that threat and duress. Mm-hmm. So you've got to know when it's useful to use your instinct and when it's useful to use critical thinking. And then you've got to know the cost of critical thinking, because it's going to use your frontal lobes, your neocortex, and that's going to be expensive.
Yeah, really expensive. And I know that with our brains, we really want to be efficient. And that actually is a beautiful segue to another question I really had is, as body language apparently gets more popular, so is communication in the virtual world. And communication in the virtual world has significant ramifications on body language. Could you maybe delve into that a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. So let me just send you an email, okay?
Yeah.
And it's a bit old school to send you an email, but I'm going to send you an email. And let's just say in our organization, and we're in the work world, just for this example, that I rank higher than you, so therefore there's some implied sense that I have some power that you don't have. Anyway, let me send you an email, and it's just the header, because I'm very busy, and it just says, see me tomorrow, 3:30. What's your response?
Oh man, I might pee my pants.
Right. It's not basically you've not biased towards a positive on this, have you? You've biased towards a negative.
Definitely.
And you've biased towards a negative because there's no information there around my feeling and intention. It's devoid of non-verbal for a start, and I haven't put in with the code of language any verbal to say, hey, good news. So there's a verbal that says this is a positive bias. Good news. See me tomorrow 3:30, and I could put a question mark, which now implies that you have choice around this. So when we don't have non-verbal information, we are more devoid of indicators and signals for somebody's feeling and intention. And when insufficient data, our instinct will default to a negative, always. So let's think about any kind of digital communication that we might use now and just think, well, how much nonverbal information is in there? And if there's not a lot, we've got to work out there will be a bias towards the negative on this. And so we see it all the time in social media, email, flame wars starting, all kinds of miscommunications and flaming that happens because of our bias towards a negative intention, because there was no, smiley face, there was no feeling in the words, there was no image that came with it, and there was certainly no moving image that came with it.
And it's so interesting you say that. What immediately comes to my mind is there's this book that came out, I think it was a year ago or something, Jonathan Haidt, The Coddling of the American Mind, and it's really looking at kind of U.S. college campuses and how it's become more difficult to, like the free speech, it's all about the free speech argument and what's going on campuses. But what I really became present to was when he was, I was listening to an interview with him, and he was talking about how some of these altercations started. And it all started with something said on Twitter or something that was sent in an email was misinterpreted by one person, they cried wolf, and then it just went nuts. And then after that, there's tons of people with outrage, people get fired, there's reactions, things, people say things they regret. And it all starts from this one little piece of text that was misinterpreted.
Right. So I would pinpoint it on it's the misinterpretation, not in every case, but let's generalize, the misinterpretation of the feeling or intention behind the words. And to that kind of campus situation, this idea of the coddling, I think a lot of critics in that area, they suggest that there is potentially an element there or a generation there, and I'm not sure which one it is, that haven't had the experience of dealing with conflict and working out conflict face to face. And how do you do that within certain parameters of safety? Because conflict is never safe. Conflict is conflict.
Yeah.
There is no, you can't have conflict and be safe.
Right.
The two, it's important that conflict is real conflict. Yeah. But you've got to work out your parameters of how safe do I, what's safe for me, what's safe for somebody else. Anyway, I guess net of all of this is potentially some groups or individuals out there who are not used to dealing with conflict, and so they deal with it via these electronic methods. And those electronic methods are terrible at dealing with human conflict because to do it best, I would say, not necessarily safest, but to do it best, you got to get face-to-face in the same room as somebody. That is dangerous. At all kinds of levels, it's danger.
And you mentioned that some people out there like that. I think that this is an epidemic. I think most of us are not familiar with how to deal with conflict, and we take these avoidant tendencies, and I've heard stories in my life, I've seen people online just go to the ends of the world to not have to confront someone about something that could be uncomfortable or awkward. It's like this this moving away from the possibility that I might feel uncomfortable in a situation.
Right. So, it's interesting because, you and me, we're recording this in Toronto in Canada, and neither of us are going to worry about where we're going to get fresh water today and if we're going to eat or not.
That's right.
Like my mind is not on that. So if there's a conflict, like, do I really need to have it? Because I'm going to eat today, and I'm going to nothing is going to affect really whether I live well, because I live in Canada, in Toronto, probably one of the greatest cities in the world, in the greatest country in the world. I'm doing just fine. And my body and mind know that. So it's easy for me to get out of conflict. And so, of course, in sections of our societies and sections of the world, we're not bothered about having the conflict because we're going to be okay. Well, over time, that could be detrimental because those conflicts are really important and quite entertaining.
Oh, very entertaining.
quite honestly, having a good argument, it can work things. It can work things out.
It could work things out.
So I'm all for, though it's painful and though it's risky, how do you get in the same space as somebody, express yourself, influence and persuade, for sure, hear better, listen better, get more alignment with each other, understand where the conflict, aggression is, accept all of that, help others accept yours, and kind of work things out, though it might get messy and muddy and nasty. How do you get that done the best way possible?
I love that little almost like an affirmation you use, the I'm going to eat and I'm going to sleep okay tonight. How do you remember that in a tense moment?
Yeah. Okay, so one of the things you want to do as an individual is start to monitor your body when you're under stress and pressure and get a sense of, what does my body do? What do I start to do? So, for example, with me, I know I'm getting angry because I'll go and find some water somewhere. I start drinking water when I'm angry. And so if I'm angry, like, in the house, I'll go over to the cupboard that has the glasses and get a glass out and start pouring, water from the tap. And at that point, I'm like, okay, right, you're getting angry. So I've got to know, what are the things I start to do when I'm getting aggressive, angry, a little more out of control? Because what could happen if that escalates is argument will happen and I won't know it's happening.
Totally.
Anymore. I won't know until afterwards.
Yeah, you're just lost in the mess.
Absolutely lost in that mess, and then afterwards I'll be like, "Wow, what happened there?"
Mm-hmm.
And possibly things won't have got any better. But if I can know I'm angry and be able to manage that, I'm not trying to suppress it, but I'm trying to manage it and have more rational conversation or rational argument at the same time, I can, if it goes right, I can be angry and I can talk about the situation and the anger and other people's feelings, and I can do all of it at the same time. That's hard work because it's much easier just to get lost in the anger.
Yeah, and I'd also say it's much easier to notice how others are when they're angry.
Oh, you're angry.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not. No, you are. Yeah.
And so maybe there's that body language expertise that maybe it's so right at the beginning of the interview you mentioned, well, one thing that we like body language for is we want to influence and persuade, we want to kind of control and have power, and that very much resonates with me. I very much see that kind of in myself, and I imagine others are experiencing the same thing. When you are getting angry, or when I'm getting angry with, say, my partner or someone else in my life, it's so much easier to observe how it is that they're getting angry.
Right. And then, well, the interesting thing is in the reading of, because that's what you're doing. You're reading body language. You're getting, but I would call it, you've got a theory of mind.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I would suggest your theory of mind is always a better indicator of your feelings than it is of theirs. Now, I'm not saying they're not angry,
Right.
but if I were to gamble, and essentially I'm doing gambling here, but I just
Right.
know I know the odds, and I'm looking really carefully at the casino and the game and the odds, and I've really monitored the games here. So I'm an expert gambler
Got
in
it.
this area, okay? Now, were I laying money, are you angry or is your partner angry because you're saying, okay, she looks angry, okay, or you're going to them, you're angry right now. I would go, I'm laying my money on that actually you're angry right now. Now, it could be both of you, it could be one or the other, but I stand way more chance of winning by putting all my money on you being angry. What's happened is you've projected
That's it.
your anger on them in some cases, but that's where my money's going. It's your projection, not actually their feeling or their intention. Though you could have seen one or two signals that would look like anger to you, it doesn't, maybe their furrowed brow was they were thinking carefully about what you'd said. And it's your anger that's making that furrowed brow into. That's enough of an indicator for angry, and you're now like, don't get angry.
You're listening to the Mindful Communication Podcast, and today we're interviewing Mark Bowden. It's so clear to me that there are so many misconceptions around body language and nonverbal communication. I've always been under the impression that if you study body language, what you're essentially doing is you're getting better at reading other people, when that doesn't seem to be the case. What seems to be the case is that the more you study this, the more you recognize that you can't read other people and that you need to bring some sort of humility and just drop your judgments about what the situation is offering. In the second half of the interview, we continue and finish off some of the topics from the first half, and we also take a dive into Mark's book. What I'm getting from this conversation so far is so much of body language is really also about just getting more humility in life.
Sure. Understanding yourself a lot more. The first thing you probably want to do, look, it's great to read those books and look at those, online articles which have images of other people, and to look at those other people and go, oh, that's when I see that, then that will be the indicator of this feeling or intention that goes with it. It's a great start, but ultimately where you want to go is, well, if I mirror that image, if I perform that image, how do I feel? And can I look out for those feelings, or can I look out for that body in myself and get more self-aware of how I'm feeling and intending? And to use that information more intelligently in the conversations that I'm having, which are important. Don't do any of this stuff in conversations that aren't important. I mean, there's all, if the conversation doesn't matter, do what the hell you like.
Yeah.
It's like,
Why not?
Why not? It doesn't matter. But some conversations and communications matter more than others. And in the ones that matter the most, the key is to try and keep more conscious of yourself, first of all, during that, and be intelligent. Use that intelligently.
You touched on two of my favorite words, self-awareness. I think that that's kind of so much what this all comes down to, is this pursuit of know thyself. And the more you know yourself, the more self-aware you are, the better conversations you're going to have, the better communication you're going to have, the better you're going to get along with others. You're going to live a more peaceful and happy life. That's kind of at least what I feel. How about you?
Yeah, for sure. And that piece of self-awareness, that the idea of self-awareness can be, I think, daunting to a lot of people, because it feels quite kind of spiritual sometimes and really higher level. A lot of simple self-awareness is just guessing about yourself. That's good enough. Like going, well, I guess I'm feeling X, or you don't have to be there going, yeah, I totally know this feeling. This feeling is, it's like, I guess I'm feeling worried, or I guess it's this, or it could be this, or it could be that. Just being conscious enough to guess about yourself is way more conscious than not guessing about yourself. You don't have to know the answer. In self-awareness, you do not need to know the answer. You just need to be thinking about what it might possibly be. You've already hit a higher level of consciousness there than most people will be doing most of the time on the planet.
Love it. I want to talk about your book, Truth and Lies, What People Are Really Thinking. So could you just give us maybe like a brief synopsis? What's this book about?
Yeah. So myself and the co-writer, Tracy Thompson, we were approached to write a book on reading body language. And we instantly said, no, not going to do that. Not going to do that because there's stuff out there. Some of it's really good and some of it's really bad. But why would we want to contribute anything more to an area that's probably got plenty in it?
Yeah.
You know? And the publishers were disappointed because like they wanted a book that would make some money for them. So anyway, we thought about that for 2 or 3 hours and then went, oh, you know what? Be quite good to write a book in this area. And so thought, well, what would a book look like that would be a new and good book in this area? So what Truth and Lies, What People Are Really Thinking is, it's a book actually on critical thinking disguised as a book on body language. Now, that's not to say within it you won't get all the great stuff you're after on body language vocabulary, how to read that. But what it's about is how to better think about other people and better think about yourself. What's the process, the critical thinking process that you can use to better understand and get closer to the truth of what's going on for somebody else and closer to the truth of what's going on for you.
So both ways.
Both ways. And very much with an initial kind of bias on others, because that's the nature of the body language reading world, is, hey, I want to know, I want to read your mind.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. It's a beautiful ideal. It's romantic. The idea, it's a superpower that I'd be able to read your mind. And so, of course, we want a book on that, and there's nothing wrong with that. But the great kind of bait and switch that we can have with that is to get you something more powerful, which is better understanding of yourself and a better understanding of the reality of human behavior and the reality of how much you can really know what's going on inside somebody else.
And I love the way that you structured the book as well. Really easy to digest chapters, short, sweet, to the point. Could you elaborate on that, kind of the thinking behind that?
Yeah, so I can't remember how many chapters there are, but there's lots.
There's lots.
There's lots. And there's lots because I really love books that you can just get into anywhere. That you can just go, oh, I wonder what's in this. And you can open it up and go, oh, that's kind of interesting. And you can get engaged in a little part. And because of that, you go, oh, you know, I should read the first chapter of that part. So you read that and you maybe skip around the book. And then you go, gosh, I'm liking this enough that I'm going to start at the beginning and work my way through. And that's just my bias. I know there are people out there who pick up a book and start on the first page and go to the end. I know there are people who kind of read like me. So I wanted something that you could skip around in. And also what we wanted to create was that every chapter would start with a scenario that we've probably all been in, you know, a situation that we can all recognize about wanting to know what's going on for somebody else in their mind, wanting to read their body language, all those kind of key indicators that we think they're seeing. And then we'd go into how accurate or inaccurate our assumptions are about that, and then the critical thinking process to go, here's how you get closer to the truth.
Right. And in wonderful subcategories like dating and being in a relationship and families and work.
Absolutely. So we start with dating, then we go to families, and then we go to work. So there's kind of 3 sections to it, because really that's where you spend all of your time with other human beings. You know, it's either the people that you're going to spend most of your day-to-day life with, either because you're in a relationship with them or, romantic one or a partnership one, or you are their family. part of the same big social group or small social group, or, because of your profession, because of your work, you spend hours with these people, and, how the hell are you going to manage that?
Yeah, you got to get by in your days. So the book is about improving your ability to get it right either with yourself or ideally with others. Can you give an example of one time that you got it right and that helped you out tremendously?
Gosh, I think I get it wrong more than I get it right. I mean, that's the that's the reality, the reality of it. Um, I simply will not anymore rely on my instinct to get it right. So I've got better examples of how I've used the system to get it accurate within the professional world that I'm working in. But in terms of my instinct ever getting it right, no. How I now get it more accurate within the relationships that I have, it's definitely about using that system of, first of all, suspending judgment. The moment I've suspended judgment, I've started to get it righter. That's the thing. Because look, here's the thing about a judgment is you can come back to that judgment. You can come back to that judgment. So my instinct will make a judgment about people. I then go, okay, suspend that judgment, put it to one side, I can come back to it. And then I start using the process of context. What's the context of these signals that I've seen? Where am I right now? What's the context of this interaction? Especially, what's the context of me being here? What's my contextual feeling being here? Have I already come to this with a bias and a feeling? And then I'll start asking more. I'll start interviewing more, asking more of myself about this situation, asking more of the other person about this situation. Maybe asking them, hey, how you feeling? What's going on? Yeah? And then out of all of that, I can start to make new judgments. My new judgment may be the same as my old judgment. And remember, it's a new judgment. It's not the right answer.
Right.
It's a new judgment.
That's that humility aspect. You're aware that, yeah, this is still a judgment.
Right. Now, at the same time, of course, my unconscious is still going, yeah, I know what's going on. I know what's going on here. So I'm having to run the two in parallel. The instinct going, I totally got this person. I know what's going on right now. And at the same time, I'm running this other kind of system that's going, yeah, I don't know. There's still more to learn. There's other potential judgments. And then at some point, I'm going to bring the two together and go, which one do I want to bias towards now? Which one do I want to go with? So that's when I get it right. And I do not get it right with my instinct. Well, of course I do, Nan. Of course I do. Now and again, or I wouldn't be alive. But I'm trying more and more and more to veer away from that more of the time in more of my life. But at but you can't do it all the time. It's just too resource heavy on the neocortex.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just got to relax and go, look, what is happening, and just let it happen.
That's wonderful. And one question I like to ask my guests when they come on the show is one thing that listeners can implement into their life this week.
Yeah, really good question. Here's what I would like people to think about doing. Think about an emotion or a feeling or an intention or a kind of a pattern maybe that you get into that you're wanting to get away from within those important communications. It could be a simple thing. Yeah, I think when I'm, in conversations with that person, it feels like I'm getting angry a lot, or I'm getting very passive. I'm kind of ducking out of it, or anything else you can think of. Get a sense of what happens in your body around that. What happens? What does your body do when you're getting aggressive? What does the body do when you're ducking out? Get a sense of how you'd rather be, the thing that you would rather be in that conversation. So it might be, hey, I'd rather be more present. Well, okay, that's a mindset. I want you to know what your body does when it's more present, when you're more present. And then when you come across those situations, because you can probably, once you know the kind of situations that you will get more aggressive or more passive in, you know it's going to happen before you've even got, you know it's going to happen. You say, oh, I'm going to have a conversation about X with person Y. I know I'm going to try and duck out of it.
You could probably even, as soon as you start thinking about the conversation you have, notice those same body signals.
Absolutely. You can start to notice, oh, here comes the pattern. Look, I'm starting to do those things. And then you can go, I'm going to now replace those things with those behaviors of being present. Now, I don't know what those are for you exactly. I could make some guesses,
right?
But it's best if you kind of work it out for yourself. And you don't need all the information. You just need a few things, a few ideas. Like, oh, when I'm present, I'm looking the person in the eye more. When I'm ducking out of the conversation, oh, my chest collapses and my chin collapses, and I look away. Okay, so that's enough. That'll do. That'll do for now. It's good enough. Try and replace it with those behaviors. Does that make sense?
Tons of sense. What is the best way for listeners to connect with you if you want to hear more from you?
Yeah, easy. So you'll find me at truthplane.com, TRUTHPLANE, truthplane.com. Find me on LinkedIn, Google my name, find me, find a way. There'll be, ways to link. Just link in with me. If you're on that professional network, link in with me. Drop me an email, mark@truthplane.com. I will get back on your emails. Find a way to connect with me. I'm easy to find, and be brave at reaching out.
And you can also check out your book, Truth and Lies. You have a wonderful TED Talk as well, which I would recommend.
Yeah, for sure. So the importance of being inauthentic is the TEDx talk. And if you just put in Mark Bowden TED, and up that'll come. That's a really good one to start looking at in terms of my ideas on fake it until you make it, and what I think that really means, and how important that is to truly having good relationships with people.
Mark, I'm so thrilled that we got to have this conversation, and better yet, we got to have this conversation in person with all these subtle cues and body language. And I wish you the best of luck in all your endeavors.
It's been a great interview. Thanks for having me.
Big thanks to Mark Bowden for coming on to the show. We're on a mission here to create a society that is more aware of the importance of connection and communication. If that's something that you're interested in supporting, please share this podcast, give it a great rating on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast, and if you already haven't, please make sure to subscribe. You can get lots of great communication tips on the Mindful Communication Facebook page at Mindful Comms, and on the Instagram page at Mindful Communication. You can also check out the website mindfulcommunication.me to see what programs we're offering there. Today's music was provided by Shinogo. You can check out Shinogo's music on SoundCloud, Spotify, Google Play, and iTunes. And editing was done by Maya Miller. Once again, I've been your host, Jonathan Miller. Thanks for tuning in today.